Hi, this is Charles Kelly, Money Tips. In today's podcast, we look at why so many millionaires, billionaires, wealthy people, successful people, young entrepreneurs are leaving the UK in their thousands. And we know that up to 16,000 people have already left the UK this year, and it was 10,000 last year. That's only the estimated number. Of course, we don't know exactly how many people are exiting the UK. And in this article, it says the rich are leaving the UK due to high taxes. Well, obviously, that is the main reason. But where are they going? And even countries like Greece has become more tax friendly. So they go for a whole thing about where they're going, what they're doing. High net worth individuals are facing several clampdowns on taxes, from changes to capital gains tax, inheritance tax, stamp duty rates, and the end of non-dom status. So capital gains tax is paid on a gain you make on an investment. So you save your money, or you get hold of money, you borrow it, you put your neck on the line, you buy something like an asset, like a property or an investment or a business, and then you work your butt off to make that into a profitable venture. And then when you sell it, the HMRC or the government come out and say, well, we want some capital gains tax. We want our share. What do you mean our share? It's just like dealing with a mafia, really. But anyway, that capital gains now has been tweaked, and now the allowance before you pay capital gains down has been driven all the way down to £3,000, not just by this Labour government, but also by the previous Conservative government. And in fact, the tax take on capital gains went down last year. And this is what happens when you put taxes up and people find a way to avoid it, or they don't sell things, they hold on to them. And this is why putting up taxes too high is often counterproductive. Inheritance tax, I think inheritance tax receipts have reached a record 6 billion for the 2023-24. So inheritance tax is now hitting a lot of people, even at the middle ground. We're not talking about super rich now. We're talking about people whose parents have died and they've got one property that's gone up over 40 years. And now the families are having to pay inheritance tax. And I've been through this myself. Stamp duty rates have gone up, so it's making investing more difficult, certainly not so profitable. And then we've got the end of non-dom status, which is why so many of the super rich, the billionaires I talked about last week, the shipping billionaire that's leaving the UK, said the country has gone to hell, and he's putting his $320 million property on the market in Chelsea, the old rectory, which has 4 acres of land in Chelsea. Can you imagine that? In Chelsea. And he's putting that on the market and just leaving. He's going to the UAE. So we're also looking at things like tax thresholds. More people, because the thresholds, that's the amount on which you get tax free, and then you start paying tax, and that goes up after the first 12,500, and then you start paying basic rate tax, and then it eventually goes into higher rates of tax. Well, they've frozen those thresholds. They're supposed to go up each year, but they've been frozen for a number of years now. So more people are getting, as their income rises, more people are getting pushed into higher rates of tax. And I saw an article in Money Mail yesterday, and it says, as Labour plots new raid on your wealth, 37 taxes you already pay, mean an astonishing 50% of your income ends up in the government coffers. If you can see that. No, it's difficult, isn't it, to see that? Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So there are 30, and they list 37 taxes. And we know we pay income tax, national insurance, average now £10,000 income tax, £6,000 national insurance contribution, VAT on everything, average £6,000 per person, council tax, pushing £2,000 a year for a lot of people. Corporation tax if you run a business, a corporation. But even if you don't run a business, you're working for a business. So the employers are now paying an extra a national insurance contribution. They're paying more national insurance, which is really a tax on job, which is why a lot of people have been laid off, or they're not hiring so much this year. Fuel duty, average of 869. Business rates, if you're running a business. Stamp duty, land tax, stamp duty, capital gains tax, alcohol taxes on every bit of alcohol you drink, vehicle excise duty to keep your car on the road that you've already paid for, insurance premium tax. So every time you take out a policy for your home, your holiday insurance, you're paying a tax on that, IPT. It sounds small, but they raise something like 8 billion from insurance premium tax. 8 billion the country pays in that tax. Stamp duty raises 13.8 billion. It's scandalous the amount of stamp duty people pay. Business rates 25 billion it raises. Fuel duty raises, it doesn't say here, but I know it raises a lot of money each year. Uh, I guess things like income tax took 300 billion in income tax. That's one of the main sources of revenue for the government. So the governments and councils, they just raise money. They just raise money from us and from businesses, and then they spend it in a nutshell. National insurance contributions raised 170 billion, council tax 50 billion. And what do the council do? They just spend it. There's all these different councils, all these different chief executives. They should merge a lot of them and make them into bigger councils with less staff and using more modern tools. I was a councillor, so I know what it's like in councils. I know that on a Friday, most of them don't work. It's hard to get hold of anybody anyway. They're working from home and having extended leave. They get so much leave. They're always on holiday. Um, yeah, so all these things add up. Corporation tax was put up to one of the highest rates in Europe. So that's they're making a lot of money on corporation tax, but I think that will go down as corporation tax companies become less profitable and then don't pay so much corporation tax. Yeah, tobacco duty, student loan repayment tax, customs and excise levies on goods imported. So everything we're buying, if it was on Amazon, you're paying a bit extra because of the customs tax on certain types of goods. And it just goes on. It goes on stamp duty on shares, air passenger duty, social environment levies on energy bills. We're all paying that. This net zero nonsense, we're all paying for that in our bills now to put wind farms up. TV license. A lot of people are objecting to paying that. It's £130 a year. Some people don't even watch the BBC. Betting and gambling tax, emissions trading scheme, energy profits levy, climate change levy, banking surcharge, penalties, digital services tax, landfill tax, electricity generator tax, apprenticeship levy, aggregates, soft drinks levy on soft drinks companies. So if you buy a Coke, you're paying that. That raised 300 million in 2025, 24-25. Plastic packaging tax, residents. I mean, just go. I've never heard of some of these taxes to be honest. Diverted profits tax, carrier bag tax, economic crime levy. I mean, where does it all end? They're just finding new and more creative ways to tax us. So no wonder people are leaving, and not just the billionaires. They can afford these things, but I'm talking about ordinary people that I talk to, lawyers, accountants. They're just fed up with it. They're just fed up with paying 50% of 7% of their income. And if you're a high rate taxpayer, even less is going into your pocket, probably more like 60 to 70% of their income is on tax. So they're left with 30% to then pay out everything else. And if they want to send their kids to a private school, they're now going to pay VAT on that as well. So it is becoming harder for those people either in the middle or higher up the scale. And I know that that people say, oh, the rich should pay more tax, but they already pay the most tax out of all the categories. They pay more tax than, say, average workers, for instance. Most of the tax takes comes from wealthy people. So they're now saying that 16,500 millionaires left for more tax-friendly environments, and the figure is more than double anticipated. 7,800 net flow from second place China. So twice as many people are leaving the UK as China. And for the first time, the European country has topped the table, which has been dominated by Chinese exits in the past. So it says here, Chief Executive Henley and Partners, 2025 marks a pivotal moment. For the first time in a decade of tracking, a European country leads the world in millionaire outflows, and that is the UK. So that's tragic for the UK because we're losing all that tax that they pay. We're losing their entrepreneurial skills. We're losing the people they employ, the money they spend, the VAT they spend, and the businesses they support. Overall, a record of 142,000 millionaires are expected to relocate this year across the world. They're not just in the UK. They do move around the world. So why are the rich leaving? Well, we know it's the taxes, it's since 2014, the number of resident millionaires in the UK has dropped by 9%, compared to the W10's global average, where it's plus 40%. So we're actually losing millionaires. The US saw the most, 78% increase in millionaires, the fastest among the W10 companies. Brexit has made it perhaps less attractive for some people. I don't know. Um, as and I think uh, it's just become more difficult. And the crime rate is another. It probably doesn't mention it here, but crime rate is another thing. People are worried about going out at night, wearing their watches. Crime rate is at a record level. 80,000 mobile phones were stolen last year from ordinary people, and they don't even bother reporting it now because the police are not going to do anything about it. Of course, I mean, the police can't track down everybody that loses a phone, but there's not presence of police on the streets. When I was growing up, there were police walking around the streets. Even up to the 80s and 90s, there were policemen walking around the streets patrolling. So if you did something naughty, the police would be there to nab you. And there were patrol cars going around. Now you just don't see anything. They've got cameras with facial recognition, but you don't seem to see much of a police presence. So people are just getting away with shoplifting. They're walking into shops and just grabbing a handful of meat and walking out. And unless they've got security as they have in some of the larger shops, there's not much that the staff can do about it. And if you have security guards, that's going to add to the cost. And this is why food inflation is going up, partly because of that, more losses due to theft and shoplifting, but also this extra national insurance that the employers have to pay, and who they're passing it on to, of course, the customers, the consumers. So whilst they might say, well, the companies can afford to pay this, it's you and I that end up paying the bill at the end of the day. It's the consumers. So where are these people going? Well, one of the most popular locations is the UAE, United Arab Emirates, including Dubai. They're looking for that luxury lifestyle, that dream lifestyle. The UAE is poised to welcome a record net inflow of 9,800 millionaires alone, including Brits. And that's just an estimate. They let people apply for a golden residence visa by investing a minimum of $500,000, $550,000 in cash or through banks, loans from specific banks. So Dubai is big on selling properties to people, and there's an option to purchase property off plan through an approved real estate company. Personally, I wouldn't buy in Dubai. I don't know. I think the whole thing is literally built on sand. And I wouldn't want to go there and live in 40 and 50-degree heat anyway. But the other top destinations are actually the USA, which is not that low on tax really, but certain states have lower taxes. I mean, certainly when I was in California, the taxes there are very high and everything was very, very expensive. So the states that have the highest taxes tend to be New York and California, because they have democratic governments, high taxes, blah, blah, blah. Some of the southern states like Texas and Florida have lower taxes, and also it's a nice place to live. You've got the sunshine, and you're in a great country. Trump also launched a gold card that will provide US residency for $5 million. So they're doing something to attract the very wealthy. What are we doing? We're repelling them. They're leaving, and some of the Labour politicians say, "Well, so what?" And that's their left-wing ideology that will drive people away. I haven't seen this much. I talk to a lot of people, and a lot of people are fed up with things. Not everyone can afford to go, by the way. Not everyone can just pack up and go. They've got family, they've got kids and grandchildren here. I talked to one multimillionaire last week, and he said, "Well, I can't go." And he said, "I actually like this country, so I'll end up just paying the taxes." But a lot of people are dismayed with the country in general. The migration situation, the high taxes, the high crime. And I've never heard it like that. We've always had a pride in the country. The last time I remember this happening was probably in the 70s, before the Thatcher era, where there was a general downtrodden feeling in the country. That Britain was known as the sick man of Europe. And then Thatcher came and changed all that. I'm not saying everything she did was right, by the way, so don't have a go at me about that. But yeah, so other countries can be countries like Poland, uh, sorry, Portugal, not Poland, Portugal. Um, the Greeks have also got a scheme. If you invest 500,000, there's various schemes. Cyprus, Portugal. I've heard of Malta, but I think their scheme has been changed. You can get golden, literally almost a passport scheme in many of these countries. Italy and Switzerland are expected to attract high numbers of millionaires due to relative low cost of residence by investment schemes. Italy has got a lot of red tape, by the way. If you're planning to start a business or do anything in Italy, there's a lot of red tape. Switzerland is looking for the high end people, definitely, as is Singapore. But Canada and Australia remain popular destinations. Australia has high taxes, by the way, but some people want a different lifestyle. Maybe they want a country that appeals to them. I don't know. Canadian residency you can get by setting up a business or raising money through an angel investment or capital venture fund. So Canada tends to be a little bit more open for migrants because they're big countries, as is Australia. But they want the right migrants. They don't want people coming there on boats and claiming benefits. So here's the countries here: UAE. These are the projected net inflows, and we've got a projected net outflow. Even Saudi Arabia, I didn't expect to see that country. Well, that's a tax-free country, but it doesn't seem like an appealing place to live. Should the wealthy stay in the UK? Well, it's up to them. You've got to take it as it comes. Can you suffer the taxes? Can you pay the taxes? It really is up to you. And then we've got another threat here, which is a wealth tax. This wasn't in the Labour manifesto, but now it's convenient here, isn't it, that some economists have said Starmer and Reeves, the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, should prepare for a UK wealth tax, say top economists. Where do these spring from, these top economists? Do economists not realize that the wealthy would leave even in either higher numbers if you bring in a wealth tax? So wealth tax means, in effect, in a letter shared with The Guardian, which is a left-wing rag that I'm reading off now, by the way. Let's just find this bit here. The campaign group called Top Tax Justice UK, which coordinated the letter, said and estimated that a 1 to 2% wealth tax on assets more than 10 million would affect only about 0.4% of the population, but that's a significant type of people you're talking about here and could raise 20 billion for the exchequer. Yeah, okay, but how many of those people are actually going to stay here and pay that tax? And if it's every year, then what? And also once you start doing it for 10 million, maybe they'll drop it down. What about people with 5 million or more or a million or more? Then where does it all end? It ends where, they're just taking so much tax off us that people are just fed up with it, and things just grind to a halt. Because what they've done with our money is just go out and borrow more money. And I'll show you how the effect of that. The government pays in interest, which this year, in June 2025, interest payments on the government debt rose to 16 billion. Now, I had a figure here, 22 to 23. This is from the HMRC. You can get that off the HMRC website. You probably can't see that. No, it won't focus for some reason. Yeah, which is how your tax was spent 22 to 23. And national debt interest was 12% of the tax take, 12%. So that's up there with things like the cost of pensions. Education is only 9%. Public order and safety is only 4%. 12% of the country's tax take in 22-23 was just for the national debt interest. By the way, health, 20%, nearly enough. Welfare, 19.6%. And then national debt, that was the third highest expenditure, national debt interest. State pensions, 10.3. So you can see how damaging it is, because the national debt is 2.7 trillion. There's the number here, 2 trillion. It's a big number, right? It's a very big number. And this is because of the money printing, the borrowing, the government borrowing, which they're still at it. Since they come to power, they've been borrowing more and more money and putting that money into the state sector, giving pay rises without any return on productivity. So that's not a very wise way to spend it. It's really looking after their union friends. So that's the national debt. But there's also the government borrowing just in June. Just in June, the government borrowed 20 billion pounds. Now, 20 billion, that's 20 times 1,000 million. A billion is 1,000 million pounds. If you had a billion, I'm sure you could live on it for the rest of your life, your children's life, your grandchildren's life as a billionaire. There's not many billionaires in the world. This is 20 billion they borrowed in June. Why did they borrow it? And it's up 6.6 billion from the same month last year. Well, they borrow it to pay for things. Just like if you didn't have any money and you went out and borrowed on your credit card to buy food and things for the house and pay your bills on a credit card. Well, that's what they're basically doing. Public sector borrowing. It's really is completely out of control. And people can't see any way out of this. The only way is through productivity, but they're driving down productivity due to higher taxes and from scaring off investment into the UK with higher corporation taxes, higher national insurance. It's not really encouraging investment. And the confidence in the country has gone down. So let's go back to interest rates because this will affect most of us with mortgages. The Bank of England is widely expected to cut interest rates when it meets on the 7th of August. Stands at 4.25%. And they've had two cuts already this year, but it's just going down by a trickle. So, the mortgage companies barely reduce their rates. There's mortgages out there still at over 4%, getting towards 5%. So, I think something's got to be done. If you want to stimulate the economy, you've got to do something. So, this is where rates of historical look at rates. They were at almost zero from 2020 to 2022. But even before that, if you go back a few years since the financial crisis, they were, less than 1%. So it was great times for people borrowing money, not good time for savers. And then it shot up 22 in 2023. They started going up again. And they started to come down under the last government, and they've further gone down a little bit there to 4.25, but they're still too high. Even Trump, where the Fed held rates this week, Trump is really angry with them, and I think he wants to get rid of Powell, the Fed chairman, because he wants rates to come down. His slogan is let them spend. Let's get them spending, because he wants the economy to be stimulated by lower interest rates. But there is one looming problem. That's inflation. UK inflation rates rose to 3.6% in June, down here. Okay. So it was high there. That's why interest rates went up, a couple of years back, and it was really down here. A few years ago, it was below 2% for a while. Then it went up. Then it came down just before the end of the last government. They'd got it down below 2%, which is their target, and since then it's crept up. Of course it will, because prices go up. If you put more taxes on businesses, like national insurance tax on their employees, where does that go to? It goes on to the bill that you're paying in the shops and the supermarkets. So food inflation, and I don't believe this 3.6%, as I've said many times before. We know that food is going up so much more than that. So there you go. That's hopefully rates will still come down despite the higher inflation rate, because I think the government really needs to kickstart the economy. Yeah, groceries added up. Average wages have risen over the past year of 5.2%. So that again feeds into inflation. Private rents increased by 6.7% in the year to May, and house prices again picked up, rising 3.9% over the year. But house prices are the rate of house prices rises are dipping as the market slows down. So maybe that's another reason why they need to cut interest rates. So there you go. That's just sort of a roundup of where we are in the economy and why so many people are leaving the UK. I'd love to hear your comments. After you've given me a like and a subscribe, I'd love to hear your comments on the situation in the UK. Are you happy here? Do you still think it's a great country? A lot of people used to say England's the best country in the world, or Britain is the best country in the world. I don't hear so many people saying that now. There's a lot of disquiet. There's a lot of doom and gloom out there, and somehow we need to lift that. I know one way we could do that, but I won't go into the politics of it. What's your view? I'd love to hear if you're planning to leave the UK, where you are going. It's not easy for everyone. As I said, it's not easy for everyone to just pick up, pack everything up and go, particularly if you've got kids at school and that sort of thing. But I think I certainly seen a lot of young people, these digital entrepreneurs. I've seen them out in the Far East as well. I've seen them in Vietnam, Malaysia, Philippines, and they're either living there or they're moving around the world. And Portugal is another popular place for that crowd. So that's not good because those people are generating wealth from nothing, and you don't want smart people leaving the UK. You want smart people to be in the UK, starting businesses, employing people here, paying their taxes, and so on. So let me know what you think in the comments. In the meantime, thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.